The calm before the storm. The Galactic Council had long ruled over the stars, an alliance of ancient civilizations that stretched across countless galaxies. They had seen the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of entire species. They had always been in control, confident in their superior technology and unchallenged power. They had overlooked Earth, a small, insignificant planet on the outer edge of the galaxy. To them, humans were nothing more than a primitive species, too weak, too disorganized, and far too unimportant to worry about. But something had changed. It began with a faint blip on the Council's radar, a small anomaly that no one could explain. At first, the scientists and engineers dismissed it as a glitch, something easily overlooked. But as the days passed, the signal began to grow. It wasn't much, just a whisper in the vast silence of space, but it was enough to catch the attention of the highest authorities in the Galactic Council. Captain Taruk of the Xixian Empire, one of the most powerful military leaders in the galaxy, was the first to speak up. He had always been the first to speak when it came to matters of military might, and he was never one to take chances. "This is no glitch," he said, his voice low and serious. "There is something out there, something new." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. A new threat, a new species. The thought was almost laughable. How could anything on a primitive world like Earth pose a threat to their mighty forces? But Taruk was insistent. "We should send a reconnaissance team to investigate," he suggested. "Better to know what we're dealing with before it becomes a problem." The other members of the council hesitated. Earth had always been so far beneath their notice. Why waste resources on a world that was clearly nothing more than a backwater? But the anomaly continued to grow, now impossible to ignore. Reluctantly, the council agreed to send a fleet to investigate. But there was no sense of urgency. Earth was far from the heart of the galaxy, and there were more pressing matters to deal with. A small task force, nothing too large, would be enough to handle whatever they encountered. No one believed the humans would pose any real threat. As the fleet moved toward Earth, the humans on the planet below went about their daily lives, blissfully unaware of the danger approaching. Earth had known peace for thousands of years, and the people had grown accustomed to the quiet. The idea of an invasion was something reserved for the history books, long ago relegated to tales of the past. Wars were something humans had left behind, or so they thought. In the United Nations, global leaders gathered for routine meetings, discussing climate change, resource management, and economic policies. No one could have predicted the disaster that was unfolding in the stars above. Humanity had long ceased to worry about threats from beyond their atmosphere. The most advanced technologies on Earth were used for space exploration, with a focus on peaceful endeavors like scientific discovery and technological advancement. The idea of defending Earth against a galactic empire simply wasn't something anyone thought they would need to prepare for. At the same time, on Earth's moon, a small group of military personnel monitored deep space. They were part of a quiet, hidden program designed to protect humanity in case the unthinkable happened. A few satellites and deep space probes were equipped with the latest detection systems, constantly scanning for any signs of extraterrestrial life. These systems were outdated and underfunded, but they were all that stood between Earth and an unknown universe. As the days passed, the fleet from the Galactic Council drew closer to Earth, still unaware of the true potential of the planet they were about to invade. They had no idea that beneath Earth's calm surface, humanity had been quietly preparing for a moment like this for centuries. The old designs, forgotten by most, were still in place: hidden weapons, prototype defenses, and ancient warships built in secrecy during the Cold War. These machines had been left to rust, neglected and forgotten, but their creators had always believed they might one day be needed. On Earth's surface, no one had seen the threat coming. Life continued as usual, with people going about their daily routines. The skies were clear, and the sun shone brightly over the vast oceans and sprawling cities. The first sign that something was wrong came when a few military satellites, buried deep in government bunkers, picked up unusual activity in space. But even then, no one paid much attention. The Earth had seen no enemy for generations, and the idea of an invasion seemed as absurd as it was outdated. But then, something changed. The satellites picked up a large fleet, moving quickly toward Earth. It wasn't just a few ships, it was a full-scale invasion force. Panic set in among the few who knew the truth. The military began scrambling, calling for emergency meetings, and quickly mobilizing every defense system they had. But it was too late. The Galactic fleet was already on its way. Across the world, the news began to spread. People were confused, scared, but most still didn't believe it. How could it be real? They asked. We're being invaded by aliens? This is just some crazy story. But the signs were unmistakable. The military, with its limited but powerful resources, began to prepare, but it wasn't enough. The Galactic fleet was nearly there, and Earth, for the first time in centuries, was on the brink of war. And no one knew just how much danger humanity was about to face. The calm that had settled over Earth began to crack like glass. For centuries, humans had lived with the comforting belief that they were alone in the universe. The idea of being invaded, conquered by an alien force, had been relegated to science fiction, mere stories for children. But now that fiction was becoming a terrifying reality. As the fleet from the Galactic Council continued its approach, the military scrambled into action. In every major city, alarms began to blare, warning of the impending threat. People looked up at the skies in confusion, but there was nothing to see, yet. The fleet was still far out, traveling at speeds that made them invisible to the naked eye. But the radar systems, though outdated, had detected them, and the world was waking up to the fact that the unimaginable was happening. In the command center deep beneath the Pentagon, General Olivia Hargrave stood over a map, her eyes scanning the blinking lights that indicated the fleet's trajectory. The military had always been prepared for some kind of threat, but this was unlike anything they had ever anticipated. Alien ships, a galactic empire, and they were heading straight for Earth. We don't have much time, General Hargrave said, her voice cold but steady. The weight of the situation pressed down on her shoulders. Alert all units. I want every satellite online, every missile system ready to fire. We have to assume the worst. Across the world, similar scenes played out. In Russia, China, and Europe, national defense systems were activated. But the world's most powerful military forces were all playing catch-up, still trying to comprehend what was happening as the fleet loomed closer. Humanity had never faced anything like this before, and it showed. The Council's fleet, vast and imposing, crossed the stars without any real haste. It was an arrogant display of power. They had no reason to fear what lay beneath them. Earth had been a backwater planet for millennia. But to the Galactic Council, the humans of Earth were a curious anomaly, something to be crushed beneath the boot of their empire. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the panic was only beginning. In the streets, families huddled together, unsure of what to do. News broadcasts ran 24/7, with reporters trying to piece together the truth, offering theories and explanations, but none of them had any answers. Aliens are coming. Aliens are coming, was all they could say. And while many tried to remain calm, others scrambled for shelter. In an underground military base in Nevada, a small but specialized team of engineers and former astronauts worked tirelessly to prepare Earth's last line of defense. The ships they had built were no longer just prototypes. They were humanity's last hope. These ships, designed long ago and abandoned when the Cold War had ended, were now being revived for a single desperate mission: to defend Earth. The prototypes, known only to a select few, were more advanced than anything the world had ever seen. Built using technology stolen from the most advanced nations during a time of global tension, the ships were designed with one purpose: to counter any alien threat, no matter how advanced. They had been hidden away, forgotten by all but the most secretive branches of the military. The humans who had worked on them had hoped they would never be needed. But now, as the first signs of the galactic fleet appeared in Earth's atmosphere, those prototypes were all that stood between humanity and extinction. Back in the skies, the Council's fleet finally entered Earth's orbit. The massive ships loomed above the planet, casting shadows across entire continents. Each ship was a fortress in itself, equipped with weapons and technology far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. They were designed to crush entire civilizations, leaving no survivors. They had done it countless times before. And yet, as the fleet settled into position above Earth, something unexpected began to happen. A single tiny ship broke free from Earth's atmosphere. Its engines flared, sending a brilliant streak of light across the sky. It was small compared to the massive warships above, barely more than a dot in the vast expanse of space. But it was the first sign that Earth was fighting back. General Hargrave watched the ship on her screen. Her heart raced as she realized what it was. "That's the prototype," she said, barely able to believe her own words. "We're not completely defenseless after all." The ship was Earth's last hope, designed to be faster, more agile, and more powerful than anything the Galactic Fleet had anticipated. It was a prototype, but it was the result of humanity's brightest minds, the best engineers, and the courage of a species that had never given up, no matter how small or insignificant they seemed to others. The Galactic Fleet, having arrived in Earth's orbit, didn't expect a fight. They saw nothing but a helpless planet beneath them. But they were about to learn a valuable lesson. The humans, despite their primitive beginnings, had something that the Galactic Empire had long since lost: the will to fight for their survival. And the war was about to begin. The first prototype ship launched from Earth's surface, its engines igniting with an intensity that shook the ground below. As it soared into space, it seemed like a tiny speck in comparison to the massive ships of the Galactic Fleet. But its purpose was clear. It was the spearhead of humanity's response, a signal to the invaders that Earth wasn't going down without a fight. In the command center of the Galactic Fleet, Admiral Vorkar watched the small ship ascend, his expression unreadable. His fleet had encountered countless worlds, crushed countless civilizations, but never before had an enemy been so brazen as to launch a counterattack so quickly. He turned to his officers. "Send a message to the humans," Admiral Vorkar said, his voice cold. "Let them know their futile resistance will be destroyed. They are nothing compared to the might of the Galactic Empire." The fleet's advanced communication systems sent a message to Earth, a warning of what was to come. But as the message transmitted, the tiny ship from Earth, unrelenting and undeterred, broke through the atmosphere and entered space with astonishing speed. Back on Earth, General Hargrave and her team watched nervously as the prototype ship vanished from their view, disappearing into the blackness of space. They knew that the ship was humanity's best hope. It was fast, agile, and armed with cutting-edge technology, but it was still just one ship against an entire fleet. The odds were terrifying, yet there was no turning back now. "Status report," General Hargrave barked, her voice sharp. "All systems are green, General. The ship is clear of Earth's atmosphere and on course toward the fleet," came the reply from one of the engineers. "But we don't know how long the prototype can hold out once it engages them." General Hargrave didn't respond immediately. She had no comforting words to offer. She simply nodded grimly. "We'll find out soon enough." As the prototype ship neared the Galactic Fleet, it was clear that the humans had underestimated just how far they were willing to go. The ship's sensors picked up the enormous warships of the Council, hovering like silent giants in the blackness of space. For a moment, the pilot of the prototype ship, Captain James McAllister, had the overwhelming urge to turn around, to retreat back to Earth and leave the battle to someone else. But that wasn't an option. "Focus, McAllister," he muttered to himself. He knew that the fate of his planet rested in his hands, and there was no room for hesitation. The fleet's warships, each capable of unleashing destruction on a planetary scale, began to power up their weapons, their enormous energy shields flickering to life. The Council had begun to notice the human ship closing in, and they weren't going to make the same mistake twice. They were going to end this quickly. Captain McAllister didn't wait. He activated the ship's thrusters, engaging a burst of speed that sent the prototype hurtling toward the nearest warship. The Galactic fleet's weapons began to charge, but they weren't fast enough. With lightning speed, McAllister maneuvered the prototype between the first few shots, dodging expertly as he closed in on the enemy ship. "Target locked," McAllister muttered, his hand steady on the controls. He'd been trained for this moment, though he never imagined it would come like this. The first blast of energy from the prototype ship streaked out and hit the Galactic warship's shields. The impact sent a tremor through the vast vessel, though the shields absorbed the initial hit. McAllister didn't hesitate. He fired again, this time aiming for the weak spots where the shield was thinnest. A blast of red energy pulsed from the ship's weapons, striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Galactic warship's shields flickered, then collapsed. For the first time, the Empire's fleet began to feel something they had never expected: fear. "Direct hit," shouted McAllister's weapons officer from the back of the ship. "The enemy shields are down. They're vulnerable." McAllister's heart raced as he lined up his next shot. He couldn't afford to miss. If he did, they would be sitting ducks in the middle of the fleet. He fired again, hitting the warship's exposed hull. The blast was enough to send the massive vessel reeling. It wasn't destroyed, but it was badly damaged. The Council's ships retaliated, opening fire with massive energy blasts. But McAllister was already gone, darting between the ships with incredible speed, using every advantage of the prototype's design. Each shot that came his way missed, and each return fire from his ship found its mark. On Earth, every eye was on the screens as the battle unfolded in real time. News stations broadcast the struggle, and people gathered in front of screens, not knowing if they would be witnessing the beginning of the end or the birth of a new hope. The world held its breath. "How is he doing that?" one of the engineers gasped. "He's outmaneuvering them like they're standing still." "We built these ships for speed and precision," another officer explained, his voice filled with awe. But no one knew it would be this effective. Up in space, McAllister's prototype ship continued to weave through enemy fire, taking out one ship after another. The Galactic fleet's arrogance was quickly replaced by confusion. How could this small, insignificant species have such technology? How could this ship be so fast, so powerful? Admiral Vorkar watched in stunned silence as one of his prized ships exploded in a flash of light. He couldn't believe it. He had expected to wipe out the humans with ease, but this single prototype was turning the tide. His empire had never faced such a direct challenge. As the first ship fell, the rest of the fleet began to react. They were now aware that Earth wasn't just a planet to be conquered. It was a place where humanity could rise, fight, and defend itself. And they were about to learn the hard way that humanity's greatest strength was not just in its technology, but in its indomitable spirit to survive. The battle had begun, and it was far from over. Admiral Vorkar stood at the center of the command room, his gaze fixed on the monitors displaying the unfolding battle. His fleet was losing ships at an unprecedented rate, and his once strong resolve began to crack. The humans were doing the unthinkable. They were fighting back. But Vorkar had never been one to accept defeat. He clenched his fists, his voice icy as he turned to his officers. "Prepare the dreadnoughts for full engagement. No more playing games. It's time to end this." The officers scrambled to carry out his orders, their faces a mixture of disbelief and grim determination. They had never seen anything like this. Their mighty fleet, tens of thousands of ships, had been outmaneuvered by one tiny ship from Earth. But Admiral Vorkar wasn't about to let a handful of humans stand in the way of his empire. The prototype ship, still evading and striking the Galactic warships with terrifying precision, zipped through space, narrowly dodging a massive energy blast that passed by inches from its hull. Captain McAllister's heart pounded as his hands moved over the controls with practiced ease, guiding the ship through the chaos. He could feel the pressure building. Each shot, each move, could be the difference between life and death. "How many more can we take out?" McAllister shouted, his voice tight with tension. "Not many, Captain," his weapons officer replied. "We're running low on energy, and there are still hundreds of ships left." McAllister's mind raced. He knew that as long as they kept fighting, they could hold the line. But at this rate, their ship wouldn't last much longer. His heart skipped a beat as another enemy ship fired at them, the beam of energy grazing the side of the prototype ship. Sparks flew inside the cockpit, and the hull groaned under the pressure. They needed reinforcements, and they needed them fast. But the battle wasn't over yet. As the Galactic fleet closed in, a new wave of dreadnoughts, colossal and terrifying, appeared from the shadows of space. These ships were unlike anything the humans had seen before. Massive, heavily armed, and bristling with energy cannons that could level an entire city with a single shot. "Brace yourselves," McAllister shouted as he pulled the ship into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding another round of laser fire. In the command center of Earth's defense, General Hargrave watched in horror as the new wave of ships appeared on the screens. "They'd brought out the big guns," she muttered, her mind working overtime. There was no time to call for reinforcements. Earth's defenses were stretched thin as it was. She glanced at her team. "We need a plan, and we need it now." The engineers and tacticians scrambled to offer suggestions, but it was clear no one had a solution. This wasn't just about one ship anymore. This was a full-on war. The Galactic Empire was going all in, and they were determined to destroy Earth once and for all. "General," one of the officers cried out, "we've detected a weakness in their dreadnoughts. The energy shields are strongest in the front, but they're vulnerable on the sides and rear." General Hargrave's eyes widened. "Is it enough for us to exploit?" "It could be, but we need to get the prototype close enough to target the weak points," the officer replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. "The risk is enormous, but it's our only shot." The stakes had never been higher. The fate of Earth rested in the hands of McAllister and his team. General Hargrave took a deep breath, her decision made. "Tell them to go for it. We're giving them everything we've got." Meanwhile, Captain McAllister was already making his move. The dreadnoughts were moving in for the kill, their enormous energy cannons charging once more. The prototype ship was out of time, out of options. But McAllister wasn't ready to give up yet. His hands tightened on the controls as he began to veer toward the enemy dreadnoughts, risking everything for the chance to land a blow. "Captain, the enemy ships are surrounding us. We're running out of space to maneuver," his navigator shouted. McAllister's mind raced. He knew he had to make a choice, fight or flee. There was no way out. He could feel the energy building inside the ship as it prepared for another round of fire. The prototype's weapons were nearly drained, and if he didn't hit now, they would be finished. With a burst of speed, McAllister dove toward the largest dreadnought, weaving through a barrage of laser fire. His crew braced themselves, knowing that this was their final chance. He aimed for the weakest point of the dreadnought's shield, and with a single pull of the trigger, the ship fired. The shot hit its mark. The blast tore through the shields, cracking the outer hull, and sending a massive explosion rippling through the dreadnought's structure. It wasn't a kill shot, but it was enough to destabilize the massive ship. The dreadnought faltered, its shields flickering wildly as it began to list to one side. The humans had managed to damage one of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. But the danger wasn't over. The remaining dreadnoughts retaliated, firing everything they had. The prototype ship shook violently as more blasts rained down upon it, and Captain McAllister gritted his teeth, keeping the ship steady as it dodged and weaved. "We're still not out of this," McAllister muttered under his breath. "Not by a long shot." But even as they fought, one thing was becoming clear. The Galactic fleet was underestimating humanity's resilience. The Galactic Empire had believed they could crush Earth without a second thought, but now, with their dreadnoughts damaged and their confidence shattered, the tables were turning. The battle raged on, and the Galactic fleet realized that the fight was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. The moment the Galactic dreadnought faltered, an eerie silence seemed to fall across the battlefield. For a brief second, both sides stopped their frantic movements, eyes trained on the crippled ship that was once the pride of the Galactic Empire's fleet. It was like the very air had thickened, as if the weight of the moment itself had frozen time. Admiral Vorkar's face twisted in anger. He had never been one to tolerate failure, and to have his flagship, the symbol of his power, crippled by a single insignificant human ship was a humiliation he couldn't afford. His eyes darted to the command console, calculating the options in front of him. He could feel the rage bubbling inside him. He had underestimated the humans before, but that would never happen again. Reinforcements, now. Vorkar barked. Destroy that ship before it can inflict more damage. The command center erupted into action as orders were relayed across the fleet. The remaining dreadnoughts and cruisers surged forward, positioning themselves between the prototype ship and the remaining Galactic forces, their energy cannons charged, ready to unleash their destructive power once more. Meanwhile, Captain McAllister's crew was working overtime, trying to keep their prototype ship alive. Every system was on the brink of failure. Warning lights flashed, and alarms blared as the ship groaned under the relentless assault. Yet there was a determination in their eyes. There was no giving up now. Captain, shields are down to 30%. We can't take much more, the engineer shouted from the back. McAllister gritted his teeth, his hands tightening around the controls. The energy reserves were almost depleted, and with the barrage of incoming fire, they couldn't keep dodging forever. Their options were narrowing by the second, and McAllister could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on him. Tell them to launch everything we've got, McAllister ordered, his voice cold. If we're going down fighting. The crew, though worn out, understood the command. They fired the remaining weaponry at the approaching Galactic fleet, their shots desperate but precise. The blasts hit their marks, disrupting the energy shields of several ships. But it wasn't enough to stop the incoming onslaught. Brace for impact, McAllister shouted. The prototype ship rocked violently as it absorbed hit after hit. The vessel shook like a leaf caught in a storm, its outer hull creaking under the pressure. Every second felt like an eternity, as if the ship itself was fighting against its own destruction. But McAllister refused to give up. As the ship lurched forward through the chaos, his focus never wavered. From the bridge, General Hargrave's eyes remained fixed on the screens. She had watched everything unfold, the destruction of one dreadnought, the retaliation, and now, Earth's last hope in the form of this fragile ship was being pushed to its absolute limits. She could sense the fear among her people, but she also knew that this battle wasn't over. How much longer can they last? She asked, turning to one of her officers. We've got less than 10 minutes, General, the officer replied, his voice grim. If the prototype doesn't land a decisive blow soon, we'll lose it all. The room fell into a tense silence. 10 minutes. Was that all they had left? McAllister and his crew were at the breaking point. They had pushed the ship to its limits, but could they really outlast the Galactic fleet's full might? The odds were slim, and the enemy was now regrouping for a final push. However, as Vorkar's fleet began to line up for the finishing blow, a new signal appeared on Earth's radar. A massive fleet of Earth's own ships, hitherto unseen, emerged from a nearby asteroid field. General Hargrave's face lit up with astonishment. What is this? She muttered, her voice barely audible. The incoming fleet wasn't just any fleet. These were the forgotten ships of Earth's ancient defense programs, decades-old prototypes, and long-retired warships, some thought to be nothing more than relics of a bygone era. Yet here they were, emerging from the shadows of space, their energy shields glowing with a deadly promise. Hargrave's mind raced. She had called in every available ship, every old defense system, and it seemed like the impossible had become reality. Earth's last hope had just arrived. "Activate all defense systems," Hargrave commanded. "Prepare to engage the enemy." Back on the battlefield, the prototype ship's weapons officer let out a cry of relief. "Captain, we've got reinforcements. Earth's fleet is here." McAllister allowed himself a brief, exhausted smile. "It's not over yet, people," he said, his voice filled with renewed determination. "We've got one last shot." The tide was turning. The Galactic fleet, for all their strength, now found themselves facing a new wave of humanity's might. The reinforcements weren't just numbers. They were experienced, battle-hardened veterans of a war that humanity had long forgotten. And now, they were back to fight for their home. Admiral Vorkar watched in shock as the newly arrived Earth ships surged into the fray. His victory was slipping away. The humans had just pulled off the impossible. "Fall back," Vorkar shouted. "Prepare for full retreat." But it was too late. Humanity had already made its stand. The Galactic Empire, once confident in its superiority, was now in retreat, forced to reckon with the strength of Earth's resolve. The tides of war had shifted. It wasn't just about one prototype anymore. It was about the survival of a world, a planet that refused to go down without a fight. And the battle for Earth's future was far from over. The sudden appearance of Earth's forgotten fleet was like a slap in the face to the Galactic Empire. For weeks, they had assumed that the humans' defenses were weak, obsolete, and easily bypassed. They had underestimated the strength of Earth's resolve, and now, as their own fleet was being overrun, they were forced to face the reality of their mistake. Admiral Vorkar's face was red with fury. His flagship had been crippled, and his entire strategy had been disrupted by these unexpected reinforcements. He had been so confident, so certain that Earth would fall without a fight. But now his fleet was surrounded, and retreat seemed like the only option left. Yet even as he gave the order to fall back, he knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Earth was not the weak, vulnerable planet they had assumed it to be. "Admiral, we're surrounded," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. "Earth's reinforcements are everywhere. We can't break through." Vorkar's mind raced. He could feel the pressure mounting as his fleet began to falter. He had one choice left, a last-ditch attack that could either break the humans' defenses or lead to total destruction. It was a desperate gamble, but he was willing to do anything to save face in front of the Galactic Council. "Prepare the remaining ships for a full-on assault," Vorkar growled. "We may have lost the element of surprise, but we will show them the full might of the Empire. We will crush them." The Galactic ships repositioned, their massive forms closing in on Earth's fleet. Energy weapons were primed, shields were reinforced, and the last remaining dreadnoughts took their places at the forefront. The battle was about to reach its peak. Back on Earth's side, General Hargrave knew that the Galactic Empire's full power was about to bear down on them. But she also knew that they couldn't back down now. They had come too far. The reinforcements weren't just a symbol of humanity's strength. They were Earth's last line of defense. If they failed now, there would be no tomorrow. "All ships, prepare for full engagement," Hargrave commanded, her voice steady. "This is the final push. We will not let our home fall." The Earth fleet's weapon systems powered up, their ships now in position to defend the planet they had sworn to protect. The prototypes, once considered outdated relics, were now ready to show the Galactic Empire what true resilience looked like. Each ship, no matter how old, had been designed for battle, and each pilot was determined to do whatever it took to protect their world. Captain McAllister's ship, battered and bruised but still standing, was ready for the final confrontation. Despite the damage to their vessel, the crew was unwavering. They had fought back against impossible odds, and now they would do so again. "Everyone, hold your ground," McAllister shouted over the comms. This is it. We fight together, or we fall together. Let's make them regret ever thinking they could take Earth. The first wave of galactic ships charged forward, firing everything they had. The void of space lit up with bright flashes of energy as the battle reached its most intense moment yet. Earth's fleet retaliated, their firepower concentrated on the enemy's weak points. Dreadnoughts and cruisers collided in a cataclysmic clash, and the sound of laser fire, explosions, and metal tearing through the vacuum filled the airwaves. The prototype ships, small and nimble, darted in and out of the larger ships, using their superior maneuverability to target the galactic fleet's vulnerable spots. Their weapons, though outdated, had been specially modified for this moment. Each shot that landed felt like a victory. But it wasn't enough. The galactic fleet was too powerful. The Empire's ships were larger, better equipped, and more numerous. Despite Earth's valiant efforts, the battle was still tipping in favor of the enemy. "General Hargrave, we're losing more ships," one of her officers reported, his voice tinged with worry. "Our defenses can't hold much longer. The Galactic Empire's firepower is overwhelming us." Hargrave clenched her fists, frustration and desperation washing over her. "No, we cannot lose. Not like this." Suddenly, a new signal came through on the comms, cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. It was a familiar voice, one that had been silent for too long. "This is Commander Reyes. We've arrived." The air in the command room seemed to shift as General Hargrave's eyes widened. Commander Reyes was the leader of Earth's Deep Space Reconnaissance Fleet, an elite force that had been stationed at the far reaches of the galaxy, hidden from the Empire's prying eyes. Their mission had been simple: gather intelligence and remain undetected. But now, their moment had come. The fleet Reyes commanded was small, but it was composed of some of the most advanced ships humanity had ever created. Unlike the older prototypes, these ships were fast, equipped with state-of-the-art weapons and shields. They had been designed for the very scenario Earth now faced: an all-out war against an empire bent on domination. "Commander Reyes, we need you now," Hargrave called over the comms. "We're already in position," Reyes replied. "We'll turn the tide. Just hold them off for a little longer." With that, the Earth fleet saw the impossible. A second wave of reinforcements, led by the most advanced ships Earth had ever built, appeared from behind the debris of the battlefield. The new ships took their positions, flanking the galactic fleet and engaging them with terrifying precision. The tide was turning, but it was still anyone's battle. Earth's future hung in the balance, and as the fleet fought back with everything they had, there was one truth they all knew: this would not be an easy victory. But humanity had never backed down from a fight. Not ever. The air was thick with the chaos of battle. The shattered remains of galactic ships floated in the vacuum of space, remnants of their might now nothing more than debris scattered across the battlefield. The Galactic Empire's once mighty fleet had been pushed back, but they were far from defeated. The war was not over, not yet. General Hargrave stood on the bridge, staring out at the screen, her hands clenched tightly around the railing. The battle had taken everything from them: ships, soldiers, precious time. But they weren't finished. Not while Earth still had breath. "Commander Reyes," Hargrave's voice was steady, despite the storm raging outside. "We've done everything we can, but they keep coming. What's the status of your fleet?" Reyes' face appeared on the screen, eyes narrowed with concentration. "We've sustained heavy damage, but we're still holding. We're moving in to flank their remaining ships, but we need more firepower. We need you to hold just a little longer. We're almost there." The pressure was immense. Earth's fleet, with its older prototypes and the newly arrived reinforcements, was fighting with everything it had. But the Empire's ships, though damaged, were still powerful, and their numbers seemed endless. Hargrave's heart raced. She couldn't afford to lose. Not now. "All ships," Hargrave ordered, her voice carrying over the comms to every crew member. "We fight with everything we've got. We're not just fighting for survival, we're fighting for our future. Hold your ground. The bridge fell silent as everyone prepared for the final assault. Earth's fleet had been battered and bruised, yet their resolve was unbroken. The Galactic Empire had expected an easy conquest, but Earth had proven them wrong. Time and time again, Earth had risen against the odds. And now, it was time to show the galaxy the true meaning of resilience. On the battlefield, Captain McAllister gripped the controls of his ship, determination in his eyes. His ship had taken a beating, but it was still operational. The galactic ships were closing in, but McAllister was ready. The prototypes, no matter how old, had been designed with one thing in mind: survival. We're going to make them regret ever underestimating us, McAllister muttered to his crew. All hands, brace for impact. This is the final push. We do this together. The Empire's fleet surged forward, intent on crushing the last of Earth's resistance. But just as they moved to strike, Earth's reinforcements arrived, launching their final counterattack with precision and speed. The battle that had raged for hours now reached its climax. Dreadnoughts and battleships clashed, explosions lighting up the dark void of space as the Earth fleet fought tooth and nail to defend their home. Ray's ships darted across the battlefield, their advanced weaponry cutting through the Empire's defenses. The new fleet was a perfect complement to the prototypes, their speed and firepower giving Earth a fighting chance. With the Empire's numbers dwindling, Hargrave knew this was their moment. Now, Hargrave shouted over the comms, her voice filled with fire. All ships, give them everything you've got. This ends today. A roar of energy filled the battlefield as Earth's ships unleashed everything they had. Lasers, missiles, and torpedoes streaked across the stars, finding their marks with deadly accuracy. One by one, the Galactic Empire's ships began to fall, their massive forms splintering apart in fiery explosions. Despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's defenders fought like lions, refusing to let the Empire claim victory. The tide had turned, and it was only a matter of time before the Empire realized they were on the losing side. But just as victory seemed within reach, a new, unexpected challenge emerged. "General," one of Hargrave's officers cried, his voice trembling with alarm. "There's something huge, approaching from the edge of the system." Hargrave's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the screen as a massive ship, unlike anything she had ever seen, appeared on the horizon. It was far larger than anything the Empire had brought with them. Its dark silhouette loomed ominously against the backdrop of stars. "Is that a galactic superweapon?" Hargrave asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know, General," the officer replied. "It's too big to be any of their standard ships." The massive warship slowly advanced, and Hargrave felt a chill run down her spine. Could the Galactic Empire have been hiding such a weapon? Was this their last play, their final attempt to crush Earth? "Reyes," Hargrave called urgently, her eyes locked on the screen. "What is that ship? Do you have any intel on it?" Reyes paused for a moment, her expression grim. "That ship is a prototype of their own, something they've been working on for years. It's a super weapon, General. It's capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single shot." The room fell silent. The weight of the situation pressed down on every officer, every soldier, every pilot. This new ship could be the end of everything they had fought for. "We can't back down now," Hargrave said, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her heart. "We've already given too much. Earth will not fall today. We will find a way to defeat that thing, no matter what." As the super weapon inched closer, the Earth fleet gathered its remaining strength. The stakes had never been higher. The battle was far from over, and the true test of humanity's will to survive was yet to come. Earth's defenders were battered and bruised, but they were not broken. They would fight to the end. Because, as they had shown the galaxy before, when humanity is pushed to the brink, it will not be defeated. The final chapter of the battle for Earth was still unfolding, and no matter what, humanity would have the last word.